Okay, I I really wanted to talk about this because I just happened to see the third episode of the Daredevil Born Again series. Um, and I gotta say, when looking at this episode, I couldn't help but remember everything that took place on the show She-Hulk, uh, Attorney at Law, and I I was just I was just completely perplexed, if you will, by the sheer fact that both shows showcase and are supposed to be about a superhero from the Marvel Universe that also is a lawyer that happens to occasionally fight crime. And looking at the third episode of the Daredevil Born Again show, not the Netflix series, this is the Disney Plus series, right? Looking at the third episode of that, and then thinking about what She-Hulk tried to do, because the third episode essentially was just completely revolved around a court case, and Matt Murdock handling said case. And comparing that to the multiple times they tried to do that on She-Hulk, it's like looking at it was like it's like night and freaking day. It blew my mind on exactly how ridiculous. It reminded me of how ridiculous She-Hulk was, and then exactly how far gone the I would say not creativity, but just how far gone actual standards have been just left astray at Disney. Because I believe reportedly the Daredevil is still like a low-rated show according to Disney Plus, but I don't find fault in essentially the show not being good, but more so people are just not really into the whole streaming service thing anymore. But that's its own thing. But for the most part, it's it was crazy because like, I really enjoyed that episode. I thought the episode was great. It was so well done. The writing was fantastic. The overarching story going on in the background was still handled masterfully without it actually interfering with the actual court case that was going on, or it being too heavy handed to where whatever it is that's going on with Wilson Fisk and the Daredevil behind the scenes, or anything else personally with Daredevil, was going to interfere in a major way with the court case. But instead, it was just that this happens. This is a court case that just fits within the grand scheme of everything going on. It's just something that's done in a really good show. I damn near say I felt as if, looking at like a really good Law and Order episode or something like that, where it's like, the crime is one thing, but the masterpiece of that episode happens to be the back and forth with the lawyers and the judge and stuff like that. Those are like some, far and few between episodes of Law and Order that you might get. But essentially, it it was handled so well. And then again, I can't help but compare it to She-Hulk because of the fact that it's like, all right, this is being handled by the same studio. The Netflix stuff was not a basically like a Disney hovering over type of situation where it was like everything that they're involved with has to fit within the MCU or has to follow their design or anything like that. But it's like the MCU threw their lot in when they put Matt Murdock in the Spider-Man movie, as well as when they threw him in She-Hulk. But She-Hulk was so bad that they essentially just annexed that was something that he was even a part of or that he did. Now, me personally, if you was actually a good writer, you could say that a lot of the changes happening in the MCU, you can equate to Spider-Man doing what he did from No Way Home. That way you could have some leeway towards an inevitable reboot, as well as like the soft changes going on within the story. To where it's like, hey, a lot of the stuff that's happening now within the movies, a lot of that shit ain't gonna matter because basically it doesn't count because of what happened with Spider-Man. But whatever. That's another topic of discussion. But it would take a great writer to be able to, not a great writer, a good writer, because Disney don't have good writers. But the thing is that this episode essentially, it was like, this is what happens when you have someone who cares about the character right for the character. When you have an actual purpose behind what you got going on, where you're not doing something as goofy as saying, I want She-Hulk to be Ally McBeal and then throwing shit on the wall and hoping that it sticks. But instead you actually have some type of grounded work to pull through. The scene where Matt Murdock goes back into the courtroom and it's empty, and then he's sitting down in like the little and he's like sitting down and he's essentially rubbing a piece of the devil horn from his mask, and then he's just looking up to the judge's podium and everything else in the stand and whatnot. And it felt as if, I don't know if this was the symbolism, but this is what I got from it. It felt as if essentially him going to church and doing the same thing for like when he goes to like the pews and whatnot in church, because he's deeply rooted in Catholicism. He's a Catholic. All right, now that's a major part of Daredevil's character. He was raised Catholic. So, but he also finds a sanctuary in the church and multiple times within Daredevil, but he also finds a sanctuary in the courtroom. That is his other sanctuary. He believes that the law works, that the system can work. That's why he is a lawyer. Sometimes it lets you down, and then he puts the law into his own hands. And the fact that that was turned on its head at the end with Kingpin was also masterfully done, because it's literally the same mentality that Daredevil has when it comes to the system failing, is that, well, I gotta take the law in my own hands, so I'm gonna go be Daredevil. And then with Kingpin, it was like, the law has failed us, even though what happened is what happened. And that's just, I was literally sitting here, and then what I predicted was going to happen was wrong. And I was like, oh shit, I actually got excited. And I was like, damn, why? I was like, I'm excited about what's happening. I'm actually drawn into this show. I'm loving it. And it's crazy because when it first came on, I wasn't one of the first. I didn't want to watch it immediately. I wanted to wait until some episodes came under its belt and then decide to binge watch it. And then I just decided to look at one episode, and now I'm hooked. And again, I had to stop watching just to make this review about, well, not a review, but to talk about the third episode, because it impressed me so damn much. Because of the fact that it's like, dude, Disney has been doing nothing but disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. And finally seeing something that has some type of credibility, it's like, dude, this is what you're supposed to be striving for with this comic book stuff. This is what we were on the path of getting before a lot of people's ridiculous egos and inability to write and a lot of nepotism got in the way. The Netflix Daredevil series is some of the best television that has ever came out. And a lot of people just can't comprehend that. Regardless of the other stuff that came out on Netflix regarding Marvel stuff, Daredevil was creme de la creme of all of them. And it being the first is crazy because it was good. It was just really good. So then you have that. And then later down the line, they make something like She-Hulk, Agatha All Along, Loki. These shows were bad. They were just bad. They were ridiculously bad. Loki shoehorned in a female that could do no wrong. It was just all around great. She-Hulk was just a terrible, terrible series written by a terribly group of people that can write, and Agatha All Along is gay. It's just sum it all up, gay. It's like, if you watch it and you like it, hey, you're dumb, but it's gay. And so it's like, that was the quality, and those were and then you got Echo, Hawkeye. Oh man, the Miss Marvel, all of these shows that came out under the Disney umbrella after shows like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Daredevil, and The Punisher, and they were just terrible. They were just terrible. But these are after the shows that were actually genuinely good, or people genuinely liked and built up interest in a world that was at a smaller scale than what the MCU was, and essentially was handled masterfully considering the subject matter and the characters that were involved. They weren't the big deal Avengers superheroes, but they were still heroes and people that were popular characters in their own right, and they were being handled well. Punisher was a good show. It was okay. Definitely prefer the first season over the second one. The first season I thought was great. But like seeing this now is like, why didn't you do this before? This is how you could have always been. Or just essentially, I'm glad someone has learned Yeah, you can release good quality content. You can handle these characters in a wonderful way. You don't need to have your ego get involved. You can have the symbolism, you can have the metaphors, you can have all of this stuff that doesn't have to copy outright from a comic book, but basically handles these characters in a way that the comics themselves are meant and have been doing for so long. There's been multiple reiterations of different storylines and things like that, but essentially comics have, well, within the big two, their characters have grown to a point where it's like, we're just looking for a story that takes that character, puts them in said story, and it just happens to be a masterful story that works within the confines of the character. That is where the writing is supposed to go. That is what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to have this character say your agenda, make this character appear in this stuff and talk about these things, because like none of that actually makes sense. Perfect example of that is Doctor Who. The new series of Doctor Who essentially did that, where you're no longer making these stories that implement the Doctor, but you have the Doctor wanting to portray a message. So you're not handling the Doctor correctly because you don't care about the Doctor. You only care about shoving your message. So you're ruining the character because it doesn't make any sense because you don't care about the character. You just care about the message. And now Doctor Who's canceled. And it's like, look at all the multiple comics that essentially don't sell because they did that. All the multiple things that they tried to pass off to shoehorn the stuff into your face, and it just didn't work. And again, I'm baffled by the fact that it's like, this episode just hit me. And it was like, man, this was really good. It was a really good episode. So far the show is great. Like I'm just been going through the episodes back to back. I'm pretty sure they're at 7 or 6 right now. I'm not exactly sure, but I just finished the third one and I was like, yo, I'm blown away. I really enjoyed what's going on with this Daredevil, but it's just taking me back because of the fact that it's like, dude, we could have had content like this and you could have been profiting and showcasing wonderful content with all of these wonderful characters that essentially you have an ability to show that you just never given a chance because you decided to throw in some type of goofy stuff. Moon Knight. Remember Moon Knight? I just remembered Moon Knight. Totally forgot about Moon Knight. Ew, Moon Knight. And it's like, it's so ridiculous that essentially you're seeing this stuff at the tail end of you drowning. You know, and it's like you're finally getting to some clarity after you're already 6 feet deep underwater. That's not a good thing. It is like, I hope that essentially we're able to actually pull off some great television or some better written stories revolving these characters. I mean, what happened in this episode was so cool. They name drop Miles Morales' dad. They've spoken about Spider-Man before. It's the stuff that you would expect and you should see within Marvel content because you have all of these working elements together, but it's this singular sectional story that's only about Daredevil. I'm not seeing a bunch of Avengers pop up or Juan opening up a portal to talk to some dumb girl or them mentioning Asgard and some goofy shit like that. Like, no, it's just, this is a personal thing for Daredevil. He's on trial. He's being a lawyer for another vigilante that a lot of people are praising just as much as they praise him. And he's trying to help him because he believes and knows that he's innocent. And because of his abilities, he knows that he's innocent, but he's trying to work within the confines of the law to get him out. And that's the whole episode. And it was just so masterfully done. And it was great. I loved every minute of it. Even at the very end, it was like, yes, this is good. This is so good. It's like, I just can't help but gush for that. But it's like, I feel bad because we're now at a point where it's like, it's too little too late for this type of stuff. But it's like, this is what it is that this type of content, or what this comic book notion of content, I'm misspeaking. This is the content that DC and Marvel should strive for. This is what it is that they should appeal to. This is essentially the excitement I got from the first Joker movie, where handling these characters in a masterful way outside of the confines of comic books. But it's what you would expect from the character, but it doesn't have to be strictly following the comic books, because again, the comic books just have this tapestry of different stories to tell with these characters. As long as you fit the character, you're fine if the story can hold up towards what it is that you got for this character. And it's like the first Joker movie did it masterfully. And then you see the second Joker movie, and it's like, this is what happens when that politics and ego shit take over. And it's like night and fucking day. So much so that the second Joker movie even goes out of its way to explain that the first Joker movie is just terrible by comparison to what the actual story is. And anyone who enjoyed it and liked it is a horrible person. God, like, just fuck. But that is what happened when it's like you see that ego overcome the characters. These characters are immortalized. They're going to live far longer than the people that are handling this work. But the best thing you could do is be someone that's remembered for handling this character in a great... There are so many comic book artists and writers that are known for having great runs within handling a character. And it's like, and they're held up in a masterful way where it's like, yeah, even Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, all these other people, and it's like, yeah, they did this story for this character, and it was great. It was great. It might have been like a freaking 15-issue series and seems pretty short. They didn't stay on for that long, but they got this artist to work on it. They got these writers and inkers and liners and colorists and all that. And it just came out as this wonderful run of comics that people love. And then you have movies trying to adapt it. And it's like, it might do bad and like it might do well. It doesn't, yeah. But it's like, I feel that you can branch that out into, or they should have always been trying to branch that out into the movie industry and TV industry when it comes to these characters. You have so much to work with. All you need to do is make sure you stay the course by having people who care handle this shit. So, like I said, I feel bad seeing this because it's like, yes, this is good, but much like with a lot of things that come out within the MCU and DC and whatnot, it's like, this one thing might be good, but it's a diamond in the rough. And like, probably shouldn't hold everything else to be on the same standard of quality. But hopefully they do like with the Star Wars thing, Andor, and they take the hint that if you approach the content like this, you'll do well. I'm not saying copy the tone, the darkness, the grittiness. It's like, no, handle the character the way the character should be handled, and you'll be fine. You will be fine. That's the lesson. That's what you need to remember. That's what these people need to do. And it's like, oh man, it's such a great episode. It was just a really good episode. All right, that's it. That's all I wanted to say. There's been another episode of Phone with Flame. I've been yours, Dane the Flame. As always, good people. Hope you have fun.